Here comes the cash for the restaurant that opened against public health orders and lost its license. Cash from ideological allies, and before that, the restaurant got cash from taxpayers. Most restaurants are not ignoring public health orders. They tell us what it would take to reopen safely. Colorado hits 2 difficult milestones. We'll show you the 3 numbers we're watching to see if this is working. And the state's new anti-tourism campaign reminds us of that uncomfortable talk from high school health class. Please open your textbooks to the chapter on human attraction, because this is next. Step 1. Take a stand in defiance of public health orders. Step 2. Become a political cause celeb. Step 3. Profit. Today, CNC Cafe in Castle Rock reached Step 3. This is an increasingly common process playing out across the country. A GoFundMe has brought in $20,000 in climbing in just one day for that restaurant that was shut down by the state for reopening to a packed house without masks or social distancing. People were literally taping money to the windows of that restaurant as well, the place that openly defied Democratic Governor Jared Polis. A group that tried unsuccessfully to recall Governor Polis has now started fundraising in order to pay for the restaurant's legal defense by an attorney who also works as a conservative talk show host. Though it seems that the single largest donation to keep that restaurant afloat came from the taxpayers of Castle Rock. Before that business fought government interference, it accepted government assistance. Here's Jeremy Hohola with that.
The conflict between this breakfast cafe and the government over a public health order.
You know, he disagrees with me and I disagree with him.
Just because you disagree with the law doesn't mean that you get to violate that law.
Contains many layers, kind of like a smothered breakfast burrito. Here's one we uncovered.
Through the application process, demonstrated a great amount of need.
Today, we've learned CNC Cafe was one of dozens of businesses that scrambled to get COVID-19 grant money from the town of Castle Rock. CNC received the maximum amount, $5,000.
94 businesses, I believe, in Castle Rock got small business grants, anywhere from $500 to $5,000 for COVID relief.
I caught up with Castle Rock Mayor Jason Gray over Zoom and asked him if there are any plans for the town to get that money back after CNC broke the law and opened up to a packed house on Mother's Day. A grant requirement was businesses needed to follow applicable laws.
I mean, there's no recourse, and we're not going to ask. I mean, you know, I think that you know, we don't want to pile on. You know, they're already having problems, and I think that that's the last thing we want to do.
The mayor, who's a business owner himself, said he tried contacting CNC to convince them not to open, but had no luck. Another interesting layer to this. In order to get the grant, CNC had to show they applied for a small business loan from the federal government. No word if they got funding because the owner hung up on me when I tried to ask her. For now, no refund for taxpayers in Castle Rock. But here's your receipt. For next, Jeremy Hohola, 9 News.
The danger in paying so much attention to the minority, the small group of businesses that are opening in defiance of public health orders, is that it takes attention away from the vast majority of small business owners who are really wrestling with how to safely reopen. Our Steve Steger had a conversation with a restaurant owner who says that keeps him up at night.
I have lost so much sleep, and I've had hundreds and countless conversations with our staff about how to do this correctly. And for somebody to hop right over all of that and undermine all of it was really embarrassing.
Ryan Fletter isn't here to vent about CNC Cafe, but it did get him thinking about what happens when he might be allowed to open the dining rooms of his restaurants again. Chow More So here downtown and Barolo Grill in Cherry Creek.
You have to pick a line and stick to it. So we're deciding that line and how we're going to stick to it.
That line will include more spacing between tables and more robust sanitizing. Fletter says it may mean reservations only so he can vet who's coming in. Those dining in may have to pass a temperature check and may have to sign something saying they haven't been exposed as far as they know.
We might have to do some of that work to make people feel at ease.
He says the crowds in Castle Rock helped him realize not everyone will be cool with that.
If anyone is uninterested in getting a thermal scan, we're preparing ourselves to say, then we might need to see you another time.
As for the likely limits on capacity, Fletter says, of course, it will cut into his revenue. That is why he's working with landlords on flexibility and even considering raising some prices on food. And he says takeout, delivery, and even meal kits he's started selling are more important than ever.
It's kind of like turning on numerous faucets, and we had kind of one major water faucet, so to speak.
The CEO of the Colorado Restaurant Association told me today that if 50% capacity is allowed, 20% of the restaurants that they surveyed say that they would probably still keep their dining rooms closed. The Restaurant Association is now pushing hard to have more outdoor seating, to be able to expand the capacity there. They also said they're pushing hard for businesses to get a heads up on what these guidelines are in advance, Kyle, because they say it could take 2 to 3 weeks for food distributors to catch up with this and allow restaurants to start to open back up.
And that seems fair, Steve, because these folks are saying, all right, we'll play by the rules, but you got to tell us what those rules are going to be, and not like on 2 days' notice.
Yeah, they want some time at least. And we know that the governor has said the guidelines will likely be around by May 25th. That doesn't mean restaurants are opening that date. They're just saying we want some heads up. We want some notice to be able to figure out how we can game plan this, because it takes a lot of planning. You heard Ryan say he's been spending a lot of time talking to his staff, trying to figure everything out. It takes a whole lot of planning to figure this out.
All right, Steve, thank you so much. A rural nursing home in Colorado, where a dozen residents died of COVID-19, lost out on some protective equipment recently, likely diverted by the federal government. Ebenezer Lutheran Care Center in Brush was expecting a shipment of PPE totaling $15,000, gowns, face masks, and disinfectant wipes. The nursing home says it recently got an email from the supplier that the disinfectant wipes, $750 worth, were being redirected by FEMA. Center still does not have any of that order. 26 residents there have tested positive, 12 deaths, and nearly 3 dozen staff members who are thought to be infected. Your property taxes could be dropping. That is good news if you don't like taxes. It is bad news if you do like things like fire departments or schools or parks or libraries, stuff like that. The state legislature could be asked to cut residential property taxes by nearly 18% to comply with Colorado's complicated tax laws, and that, of course, would mean less revenue for public services. The reduced property taxes could mean almost $500 million less in funding for school districts across the state. That is a gap that has to be made up by the state, even though the state just found out that it is going to be more than $3 billion in the red next year, a subject we'll discuss in just a moment. Colorado hit milestones in the fight against COVID-19 today. Our man who watches the numbers closely will explain the significance. And it's an anti-tourism campaign from Colorado's own tourism board. A request for people from out of state to stay there for now. That's next. Wearing the same ugly sport coat that I was wearing in that Entertainment Tonight promo. How about that? Hey, Colorado hit a pair of milestones that we never wanted to see, but we knew were going to be inevitable once this started rolling. 20,000 confirmed COVID-19 cases and more than 1,000 deaths in our state. As the state begins to lift social distancing requirements, state epidemiologists are going to be watching the data for signs of trouble. Our resident numbers guy, Chris Vanderveen, is going to be watching 3 things in particular.
A state with parts largely vacant for weeks and weeks is now opening, slowly. If you're interested in getting in on data that should tell you how it is or is not working, might we offer these 3 suggestions? 1. Something CDPHE just started putting on its data page. Daily counts of patients admitted into our hospitals. The numbers go back 1 month right now, but as you can see just by going left to right, the numbers are way down from April highs. Should this start to creep back up, that'll be a bad sign. 2. Total hospitalized day to day. Basically, can we tell if more people are going in or going out? Here's another curve that's bending downward. Again, another good sign. But should patients start to need more intensive care, or if more patients start to show up, this line will show it. Watch it closely. And 3, Something we talked about yesterday, positivity data, basically a percentage of tests done that result in a positive result. You want this number below 10. And Tuesday, it hit 7.06%. That's the lowest percentage seen in the state's testing effort since testing began in early March. Should this number stay below 10, we'll be in good shape. Should it move above it, well, now you know. For Next, this is Chris Vanderveen.
Our next question comes from a viewer named Chris. He wants to know why Denver's mayor isn't enforcing social distancing on board planes at DIA if they are on the city's property. So, Chris, that is a fantastic question. The mayor has no authority over what happens inside of an airplane. That is the FAA's jurisdiction. The mayor does have a say in what happens inside the airport itself. So, DIA has the city-ordered social distancing requirements in the terminal and at the gates. Mayor's office has ordered the TSA to reconfigure security lines so that there's more space between the people. And DIA is included in the mayor's public face mask mandate. So imagine having to take your family budget and cut 25% of it right away. That's actually not very hard for a lot of Colorado families to imagine right now, and for the state legislature, which is looking to do the same with the state budget. Now imagine doing that budget cutting at a time when you are expecting more income. That is the roller coaster that legislators are on, along with our politics guy, Marshall Zellinger.
Colorado is riding high, a $34 billion budget getting bigger. In December, lawmakers were told the state would have $832 million more to spend starting in July. Then COVID-19 happened, and in March, lawmakers learned the state would instead have only $27 million more. The free fall continued, and today we learned it's not more, but $3 billion fewer dollars.
What has transpired over the last 2 months has been in many ways unimaginable.
With sales tax collection down, income tax down, oil and gas down, Colorado's bottom line is way down, which leads us to a question from Republican Representative Kim Ransom, who represents the Douglas County district just north of Castle Rock, where a cafe just got shut down for allowing dine-in service.
Do you have any feel for any changes if we just let businesses open up as they chose to?
Restrictions and the virus is something that we would have to almost model that with an epidemiologist.
Ransom's question could also apply to Colorado's unemployment situation. In March, the state's unemployment fund had $1.1 billion. By the end of next month, it will be $7 million in the negative. In 2 years, by June 2022, that fund might be in debt $2.5 billion.
We actually borrow from a federal account. We set up an account, and then we could draw money from that account.
It's business owners, not the state, that replenish the unemployment fund by paying higher unemployment premiums and a surcharge when the fund goes broke. Back to Ransom's question. What if businesses were allowed to open tomorrow?
It's probably a better way to say this, but the damage has already been done in terms of how much we've already paid out. Again, we paid out $315 million in April alone. It's very likely we'll pay out $300 million again in May.
The fund did go broke in the 80s and again from 2010 to 2012, so it's happened before. What would a recovery look like? We're going to try this because it's a white screen. I hope you can see some of it. But on the top right here, there is like a Nike swoosh. That's what the expected recovery would be, a slight dip and then a gradual increase. There is a concern, though, that if we have a second surge, we would see a W where it goes up, down, and then back up again, Kyle.
Okay, it looks like the bootleg Nike apparel that you might have bought on a high school trip to Cancun, speaking solely from personal experience. I have to think, though, Marshall, that as people think about, well, how would I do this with my family budget, and the state legislators look at it from the state budget perspective, they are constrained by so many laws that most people would never even wrap their minds around in terms of the way Colorado's financing structure works. That simply because something seems like a common sense idea or fix doesn't mean that they're going to be allowed to do it.
And a lot of it hinges on competing constitutional amendments regarding the state education finance, K through 12, paying for schools. And that is required no matter how much money you have to make that work and then figure out how much you have remaining can go towards the other things that are not K-12. So it's the focus on K-12 first, and then it's that trickle down. What do we have left?
I I appreciated the innovation there of showing us the computer screen, at which point the screen got very dark, and now it got very, very bright like the face of the sun. But it was a good try, and no one ever gets penalized on this show for trying. Thank you, Marshall.
Sure.
Colorado's Attorney General is preparing for the biggest moment of his career tomorrow. Don't mess it up.
If we win, I anticipate the headlines of, can 538 Michael Baca's elect the president? The Supreme Court says yes.
The one and only Michael Baca, who shook up Colorado's electoral politics, says he can't lose either way. Colorado's new tourism campaign asks people not to come here. It's a lesson in delayed gratification, if you can wait through the commercial break. Absence, like abstinence, makes the heart grow fonder. And Colorado's tourism office has a new campaign asking people to think of Colorado, but not to come here right now. New campaign called Waiting to CO asks people out of state to post their favorite travel memories from Colorado, but to hold off on planning their vacations here so that tourist towns aren't overrun with unwanted visitors, increasing the risk from COVID-19. The campaign does not yet have a TV ad, which seems to me like a glaring omission. Right now, Colorado's Democratic Attorney General Phil Weiser is preparing for the biggest moment of his career, arguing the case of Colorado's faithless elector in front of the United States Supreme Court. This case, which we have been covering since 2016, could change how America elects a president, starting right away in 2020. Weiser used to clerk for the Supreme Court. His key card probably doesn't work anymore, but that doesn't matter because these arguments are going to be via phone. Still, Weiser says he's been practicing for months.
It was on my mind that as a fantasy of what my time as Attorney General could look like, it would include an argument before the U.S. Supreme Court. Not in my wildest dreams did I ever imagine it could be over telephone in this format, which has never happened before, and almost nobody has lived through a pandemic before. So we're obviously in a bizarro world. You need to practice the way you play. And so we had the exact same format where we had people playing justices going around in the way the justices do, only on the telephone. And then afterwards we go on Zoom or other platforms to actually have a conversation about what I could do better.
That's interesting. So in 2016, Michael Baca, one of Colorado's 9 electoral college electors, cast his vote for somebody other than Hillary Clinton, who won in Colorado. Then the Republican Secretary of State at the time, Wayne Williams, removed Baca as an elector. 2 other electors also planned to go rogue and vote for somebody else. They watched Baca get bounced and they backed off the plan. All 3 of them then sued the state. Years worth of appeals later, the case heads to the Supreme Court, and Baca will be watching. He told us he thinks he's in a win-win situation.
Either way, no matter if the court sides with us or against us, I think there's going to be a groundswell of interest. Ultimately, if electors can't cast their votes as the Constitution is written, if we're not allowed to do our job, why do we have electors? And so I think both decisions by the court, if they make a decision, both decisions will ultimately lead to reform in the Electoral College.
Baca's been on Next a couple of times since he went rogue in 2016. He told us he's disappointed that he's not able to go to the Supreme Court in person to witness this. He currently works as a high school government teacher in Nevada. Hey tourists, it's me, Colorado. I know you want to be with me right now, but the time isn't right. If you truly love me, you'll wait. Whether it's our first time or a long-term relationship, it should be special. And it'll be even more special if we're patient. I know you said you'll use protection, but protection doesn't always work. And I don't know where you've been. Tourists, I need you to respect my boundaries. You know how people say, it's not you, it's me? This time it's you. It's totally you. You could have the Rona, and I can't have you bring that around here. What's that? Oh, if you can't be with me, then you're going to get with Nebraska? Oh, well, you enjoy that, all right? Kiss these goodbye and enjoy that. Let's not fight. I want you back. Just not right now. Not paid for by the Colorado Tourism Office, but they can totally use it if they want. All of those restaurants that are offering safe curbside and delivery. Kevin Sweeney was more critical, saying that he feels sorry for the people operating on a 5% margin in that business, said allowing only a small percentage of their customers back in is not going to save them. He said, I wish I had a good solution instead of platitudes. We are in the business of looking for those good solutions. We'll keep talking to folks in the restaurant business. And finally tonight, a question from Jay. Curious if we could get Steve Steger a level to check on the placement of his shelves behind him. Steve Steger is a talented home handyman. I wouldn't doubt his level shelves for a moment. See you next time.